to the home nations taking part in the Netball World Cup in Liverpool. This morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Lillian Greenwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I join the Prime Minister in offering our congratulations, particularly to the England team who won the Cricket World Cup. We were very proud to host some of those games at Trent Bridge in Nottingham, and also our best wishes to the netball team. Notts County, the world's oldest professional football club, is facing the very real threat of extinction. Under Chairman Alan Hardy, the club has reached a financial crisis and could be liquidated before the start of the coming season. Players and staff have not been paid in weeks, and the club is set to make its fourth appearance in the High Court later this month to face a winding up petition. Will she and the whole House join me in calling on the FA, the Football League and the National League to investigate the current situation and help secure the future of this truly historic club?
Well, can I thank the Honourable Lady for raising this issue? Obviously, football clubs up and down the country are of great importance to their local communities, and overall the financial state of football clubs is better now than at any time. But the government certainly isn't complacent, and we'll continue to hold the football authorities. She's referenced various football authorities. We will continue to hold the football authorities to account for ensuring there's transparency around the ownership of clubs, sufficient inquiries of the suitability of owners are made, and financially clubs are continuing to live within their means. But I'm sure the whole House will join the Honourable Lady in hoping that as the world's oldest professional football club, Notts County resolves their situation soon.
Sir Peter Bottomley.
Can I thank the Prime Minister and her Chief of Staff, Gavin Barwell, for all that they've done with Secretary of State on residential leasehold reform, where there's a prospect of ending unfairness and ending exploitation. As another legacy, can I refer the Prime Minister to the book by Michael Gillard on the legacy of the Olympics, about Gillard's investigation into the criminals who were there? I'm not suggesting she reads it before next week, but those who do look at it should see how the Department of Professional Standards in the Met overturned the police officer who was investigating the criminals. And when they're doing that, can they look at the book by Gurpal Verdi, Behind the Blue Line, about how they managed to investigate him when they did not interview the officers who are known to have been involved in the arrests of the complainant, and they charged him with an offence with a weapon that wasn't available until 8 years after the alleged offence.
Can I say to my honourable friend, and I recognise the way in which he has championed a number of cases, and he's referenced one of them over the years in this House. Indeed, I had a number of meetings with him when I was Home Secretary in relation to that case. It is important that our police are able to operate to the highest professional standards. They have operational independence as to who they investigate and how they conduct those investigations. But I'm sure the whole House will want to say that we expect our police to conduct those investigations properly and fairly, and to ensure that when crime is committed, they are investigating that crime.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I agree with the Prime Minister on her congratulations to Lewis Hamilton and winning on Sunday, and to the fantastic cricket team which ended up winning the World Cup, but also thanks to New Zealand as well. What a brilliant final it was, and what a great advertisement it was for the wonderful game of cricket. Mr. Speaker, time is running out on climate change. That's what the Environment Secretary said yesterday. So why did the All-Party Environmental Committee accuse the government of coasting on climate change?
The government has a fine record on climate change, including our recent legislation on net zero emissions. But there is an issue, Mr. Speaker, that needs to be addressed in this House. And before the right honourable gentleman stands up and parades himself as the champion of climate change, or the champion of the people, or the defender of equality and fairness, he needs to apologise for his failure to deal with racism in the Labour Party. Just today, 60 distinguished members of the Labour Party have written in the newspapers, "The Labour Party welcomes everyone except it seems, Jews. This is your legacy, Mr. Corbyn. You still haven't opened your eyes. You still haven't told the whole truth. You still haven't accepted your responsibility. You have failed the test of leadership. Apologise now.
Jeremy Corbyn! Order. The right honourable gentleman will be heard. Attempts to shout down are down market, they're low grade, they're regarded with contempt by the public, but above all, they won't work. Be quiet. Jeremy Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker, this party was the first to introduce anti-racist legislation into law in Britain. This party totally opposes racism in any form whatsoever. Anti-Semitism has no place in our society, no place in any of our parties, and no place in any of our dialogue. Neither does any other form of racism. And when 60% of Tory party members think Islam is a threat to Western civilization, and the Prime Minister has said she will act on Islamophobia within her own party, I hope she does. I look forward to seeing that being dealt with, as we will deal with any racism that occurs within our own party as well. Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Climate Change last week published its annual report, and it described the government's efforts on climate change not a bit like what the Prime Minister just said. They described it as being run like Dad's army. The government's target is to reduce carbon emissions by 57% by 2030. Can the Prime Minister tell us how much progress has been made on that?
To the right honourable gentleman on the climate change issue, the chairman of that committee said that the UK is the first major economy to set a net zero emissions target and intends to host the world leaders at next year's landmark climate conference. These are historic steps forward and position the UK at the forefront of the global low-carbon transition. But the right honourable gentleman, I note, did not apologise in response to my first questions. We deal with Islamophobia in the Conservative Party. Any allegations of Islamophobia are dealt with, unlike his way in the Labour Party, where he is failing to deal with anti-Semitism. And he can stand up and say all he likes about the Labour Party introducing anti-racism legislation. Just last week, Trevor Phillips, the former chairman of the Equality and Human Rights Commission, said the following: Labour today presents like a textbook case of institutional racism.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Mr. Speaker, this party opposes racism in any form whatsoever in our society. And coming from a Prime Minister who encouraged the hostile environment, sent go-home vans around London and deported British citizens, which she's now had to compensate them for, I think she might look to her own party and her own government's records as well. Mr. Speaker, the issue of climate change is obviously crucial, and we support zero emissions target. The latest figures, however, released in April, show the government is going to miss that target by 10%. The gap is widening. At the current rate, they won't meet their 2050 target until 2099. At that point will be too late for our planet and our children. Clean energy investment has fallen 3 years in a row. Why does the Prime Minister think that's the case?
Still no apology, I note, from the right honourable gentleman. But We've outperformed in our first and second carbon budgets. We're on track to meet the third. We have taken the historic step of legislating for net zero emissions by 2050. We have yet to see all the policies and proposals in our clean growth strategy coming into play and having an effect on our target. This is a party that is acting on climate change. This is a party that is delivering for the people of this country. This is a party that is dealing with the issues that matter to people day to day. The right honourable gentleman needs to start dealing with the issues that matter to the members of his Labour Party, as shown in the newspapers this morning.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Speaker, it was a Labour government that introduced the Climate Change Act of 2008. It's the Labour Party that is... It's the Labour Party that is committed to dealing with the issues of climate change. Can I give the Prime Minister a few suggestions why renewable investment is falling? They scrapped the feed-in tariff. Yeah. They failed to invest in the Swansea Tidal Lagoon, and they've slashed investment in onshore wind. If we're serious about tackling this climate emergency, we need to fully acknowledge the scale of the problem. Labour is committed to measure total UK emissions. Not just what we make here, but what we buy from abroad also, so we have an accurate figure of what the emissions really are by consumption in this country. Will the Prime Minister match that commitment?
Prime Minister.
The right honourable gentleman knows we measure our targets according to the international definitions of those targets, and that's exactly the right thing for us to do. But he talks about renewables. Let's just actually look at the record on renewables. Last year, renewables generated a record amount of electricity in this country, 33%. Over the last year, we've generated record levels of solar and offshore wind energy. And 99%, he talks about what the Labour government did, 99% of solar power deployed in the UK has been deployed under Conservative government.
We're actually hiding the scale of the problem by passing the buck to other countries as well. If all emissions are counted, the figures would actually be 69% higher in this country. Every year, Mr. Speaker, air pollution kills 40,000 people in this country. In 2017, the Conservative manifesto said it would promise to take action against poor air quality in urban areas. What action has been taken?
Well, can I say, first of all, to the right honourable gentleman, air pollution has reduced significantly since 2010 under the Conservatives in government, and our clean air strategy is the most ambitious air quality strategy in a generation, described by the World Health Organization as an example for the rest of the world to follow.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Beautiful words, Mr. Speaker, they truly are. The only problem is air pollution levels breach legal limits in 37 of the 43 areas of this country. 2/3 of our children are growing up in an area where pollution breaches legal limits. This crisis is literally suffocating our children and damaging their health. Once again, this government is dodging its responsibility while Labour leads the way. The Mayor of London, for example, is leading the way on better air quality in the capital city. The Tories promised the greenest government ever. They failed on carbon emissions. They failed on air pollution. They failed on solar. The Prime Minister says she wants action but supports fracking and has effectively banned onshore wind. The climate emergency simply cannot be left to the market. All of us need to take responsibility to secure our common future. Labour led the call to declare a climate emergency and has pledged a green industrial revolution with new jobs. When will this Conservative government face up and get a grip on this crisis and deal with it?
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman that we have already seen over 400,000 new jobs in the area of renewables and clean growth in this country, and we expect to see up to 2 million more jobs in that area. But I'm not going to take any lectures from the party opposite on this issue. when the last Labour government ignored advice that diesel fumes would damage our environment and incentivised diesel cars through the tax system. He talks about dodging responsibility. The person who's been dodging his responsibility during this PMQs is the right honourable gentleman. The real disgrace is his handling of racism in the Labour Party. Activists protesting, MPs leaving, staff resigning. What would his great heroes of Attlee, Bevan and Ben think? Look what he has done to their party. We will never let him do it to our country.
The Prime Minister has repeatedly made animal welfare a priority during her time. Britain leads the World Animal Welfare Protection Index. And can I thank her and the Secretary of State for supporting Finn's Law, the Animal Welfare Service Animals Act, and also for bringing forward the sentencing bill, which for a nation like ours, which loves animals, is a key measure because it will put up the maximum sentence to 5 years imprisonment. Will she do whatever more she can to ensure a speedy passage?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I first of all thank my right honourable friend, because I know this is an issue that he has been working on himself for some time, and thank him for highlighting the work that has been done. There is no place for animal cruelty in this country, and when the sentencing bill is passed, as my right honourable friend alludes to, those who mistreat or abuse animals or are involved in animal fighting will rightly face one of the toughest penalties available anywhere in the world, which cements our place as a world leader on animal welfare. And the new maximum penalty will also apply soon to those who attack our brave service animals, such as Finn the police dog, through Finn's Law. And I want to pay tribute to the supporters and those organisations such as Battersea Dogs and Cats Home and the RSPCA for championing these changes, and I wish it a speedy passage through this House and the other place.
Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week, the Prime Minister finally did the right thing. When Donald Trump told women that they should go home, she called it out as unacceptable. Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. Donald Trump's actions are textbook racism. They are repugnant, and diplomatic politeness should never stop us from saying so. Will the Prime Minister now, on reflection, also take the opportunity to call out and condemn the racism of the go-home vans that she created in coalition government with the Liberal Democrats?
I said at the time that was too blunt an instrument. That was dealing with... But there is an important issue here, which is that the public expect us to have a fair immigration system which deals with those who are here illegally. And that is what we need to do. And he refers to the comments made by President Trump. As he has himself alluded to, I have strongly condemned those comments made by President Trump.
Ian Blackford.
Mr. Speaker, when the Prime Minister implemented the hostile environment policy, her party stayed silent. When she delivered the racist go-home bans, the Tories remained silent. When asylum seekers are deported to places where their lives are at risk, the Tories stay silent. And yes, Mr. Speaker, when faced with the racist columns written by the former Foreign Secretary, they stay silent. Isn't the member for Aberconwy correct, Prime Minister, when he warns that the Tories are appealing to the type of nationalism that has seen UKIP grow? While the Tory party shares more with the extremes of Donald Trump and Nigel Farage, isn't it any wonder, Mr. Speaker, that Scotland looks on in horror?
The Conservative Party is a party for the whole of the United Kingdom, and the only party in this House which is appealing to blatant nationalism is the party that wants to take Scotland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Shropshire, 300 doctors, surgeons and clinicians have been at the forefront of major reconfiguration and modernisation proposals for A&E provision in our county. We have secured £320 million for these vital changes, and yet Labour-controlled Telford Council, an organisation bereft of any medical expertise, has repeatedly prevented these vital changes from taking place. Will the Prime Minister update the House when this long-running saga is going to finally come to an end and my doctors and clinicians can get back to their day jobs?
Can I say to my honourable friend, I thank him for raising what is obviously a very important issue for him and his constituents, and I recognise that there are concerns about the Future Fit programme and the services in Shropshire. I understand that my right honourable friend, the Health Secretary, has referred this programme to the Independent Reconfiguration Panel, and the Department of Health will be studying that advice carefully before making a decision. We have a simple view that clinicians should take these decisions because it's clinicians who know best the services that should be available for his constituents and others.
Steve McCabe.
Thank you. I often disagree with the Prime Minister, but I respect that many of her intentions are honest. By promising them leave entitlement, they were thrilled. So far we've had reference to a committee. Is it a failed promise, or does the fact it's a manifesto pledge mean she's ensured that the honest and decent thing for her successor to do is deliver it?
Well, can I say to the honourable gentleman that the issue of carers' leave is one on which we've been consulting. That is in the system, and I have every expectation that whoever succeeds me in this place will indeed take that forward.
Sir Roger Gale.
Mr. Speaker, it's been remarked upon that my right honourable friend is one of only 3 Prime Ministers upon whose watch a World Cup has been brought home. She and her husband were fortunate enough to be present to watch that wonderful team effort. In the final week of her premiership, would my right honourable friend allow herself the luxury of considering that history is likely to treat her captaincy rather more kindly than it will treat those who have campaigned against her?
Can I thank my honourable friend and thank him? Thank my honourable friend and thank him for the support that he has shown me and the government in the work that we have been putting forward. I was very pleased to be able to be there for the whole of the World Cup final on Sunday. It was nerve-wracking, it was nail-biting, but our team brought it home, and many congratulations once again to them.
This is Sharon Hodgson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When the Prime Minister made her first speech in Downing Street, she said she would fight against the burning injustices of inequality. 3 years on, Mr. Speaker, nothing has changed. As schools wind down for the summer holidays, many children will be excited for the fun and the joy to come. But thousands of families whose children receive free school meals will be worried about how they're even going to feed their children, let alone take them on holiday. If she wants a meaningful, lasting legacy, will she extend the holiday activity funding to ensure that all children who receive a free school meal during term time are fed in the holidays?
Can I say to the honourable lady that we had a successful £2 million programme in the summer of 2018, and this year we are more than quadrupling this funding. Around 50,000 disadvantaged children in 11 local authority areas will be offered free meals and activities over the summer holidays. That is going to be funded by £9 million from the Department for Education. We had a good programme last year. We're expanding that programme this year because we want to help children wherever they are receive the right support in school and out.
Ed Vasey.
In the week when we celebrate the anniversary of man first walking on the moon, could I draw the Prime Minister's attention to the amazing space cluster that exists in my constituency at Harwell with amazing companies like Open Cosmos and Oxford Space Systems. In the last week of her premiership, could she perhaps have a conversation with the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority and the Department of Business? If we can accelerate the decommissioning of the land at Harwell, we can really accelerate the success of this cluster. And I will personally invite her back to inaugurate Theresa May Way when this is done.
Well, the Prime Minister is just beyond excited. The Prime Minister.
I was going to say, Mr. Speaker, such temptation has been dangled before me, and I thank my honourable friend for it. Can I say to him, first of all, we're very pleased with the cluster that there is in his constituency and the important role that that plays in our economy, in our research, in our science development. The Business Secretary is in the chamber and has heard the point that my honourable friend has made about accelerating this process, and I'm sure that the Business Department will look carefully at his request.
Paula Sheriff.
Mr. Speaker, passengers across the north of England are wondering which has been delayed the longest, the Northern Powerhouse or the next train. So will she and her legendary Transport Secretary use their last few days in office to justify our endless waits for relic pacer trains while the Northern Fail franchise rewards incompetent bosses with £2 million pay packets? Or will she finally agree with our plans to renationalise the railways and run them for the public good?
Can I say to the honourable lady, she talks about the Northern Powerhouse. The Northern Powerhouse is there. We are operating. We are putting development. We are putting funding into the Northern Powerhouse, including record levels of funding for transport across the north of England. That is the commitment this government has made. We're not just using words. We're actually putting the money in. We're seeing a difference. We're making a difference.
Rachel McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Prime Minister join me in congratulating Ian Dukes and our local community in Redditch for raising nearly £500,000 for the Rory the Robot appeal to fund a prostate surgery robot in Worcestershire? However, despite all the hard work from the Acute Trust, the Specialist Commissioners haven't approved the business case yet. So will she use her legacy in her last week to help us sort this problem out?
Well, can I thank my honourable friend? I'm very happy to congratulate Ian Dukes and all those who've been responsible for raising the money for, as I understand it, Rory the Robot. I am sitting 2 steps away from the International Development Secretary, but I gather this is a reference to medical equipment that my honourable friend has made. And obviously I will look carefully at the point she's raised about the business case.
Virendra Sharma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the entirety of this Prime Minister's term of office, the UK has held to its 0.7% international aid commitment. Is the Prime Minister proud of this record? And will she use her powers and influence to ensure the next government holds not just to the letter of this commitment, but the spirit too?
Thank the honourable gentleman for raising this issue. I am indeed proud of the role that the United Kingdom has played and the development aid that we spend across the world, helping the most vulnerable, helping some of the poorest people around the world, but also dealing with issues as they arise, like the Ebola in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Can I also say to the honourable gentleman, the 0.7% of GNI target is now in legislation, and also it was a commitment that we as Conservatives in our manifesto committed to maintain. So I'm sure that that will continue, and it will continue to be an important sign of what this government, this Conservative Party, believes we should be doing around the world in helping some of the most vulnerable and some of the poorest.
Robert Halfon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prime Minister, on Saturday I met a group of residents in Harlow, many of them on government help to buy schemes, who moved into homes built by Persimmon that are shoddily built with severe damp and crumbling walls. In the eyes of my residents, Persimmons are crooks, cowboys and con artists. Will my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, hold the company to account, ensure that residents get proper compensation, urge the Chief Executive to come to Harlow to meet with these families who have suffered so much? Persimmon Homes should not behave in this way.
Well, my honourable friend has raised a very important issue, because as we increase the housing supply, it is important that the quality of new build homes continues to improve, and that we set out in our housing white paper an ambition, a target for a housing market that works for everyone. So we do expect developers to deliver good quality housing. We've already announced our intention for a new homes ombudsman to protect the rights of home buyers and to hold developers to account. We expect all developers to build their homes to a good quality standard. These are homes that people will be living in for many years. They deserve those standards.
Mr. Speaker, all the major European industrial nations insist that ships for their navies are built in their own yards. So as part of her legacy, can I urge the Prime Minister to be a good European and follow their example, and instruct the Ministry of Defence to build their new support vessels in British yards, securing British jobs and using British steel?
I say to the right honourable gentleman that, as he knows, it is this government that actually brought forward our shipbuilding strategy to ensure that we are supporting and encouraging shipbuilding around the United Kingdom. In relation to the Royal Navy, obviously the issue that he refers to is, I understand, support ships, and the Ministry of Defence is looking at the future provision of the building of those support ships in the future. We, of course, maintain our position in relation to the building of the ships of the Royal Navy.
George Freeman. Mr. Speaker, this weekend our sporting heroes, winners and losers, inspired a new generation. Science can also inspire. 60 years ago, JFK electrified the world and united a divided and fearful nation with the inspiring Apollo moonshot programme, which also helped to defeat the Soviet Union and laid the foundations for US technology leadership. Would my right honourable friend join me in saluting our pioneering scientist astronauts Helen Sharman and Tim Peake, and agree with me that Brexit can and must be a moonshot moment for British science and innovation to tackle global challenges?
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for raising this with me? I'm very happy to congratulate and salute our pioneering UK astronauts Helen Sharman and Tim Peake. One of the first receptions I held in number 10 Downing Street when I became Prime Minister was for Tim Peake, and what was inspiring was to see the way in which what he had done in space had encouraged young people particularly to have this interest in space and in science. We're a global leader in science and innovation. We will continue to do that once we leave the European Union, and of course leaving the EU will open opportunities for UK science and innovation to tackle global challenges.
Chris Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tonight, campaigners will be meeting in Govan to discuss direct action against the Home Office contractor Serco, who intends making 300 vulnerable asylum seekers homeless through their lock change eviction programme, many of whom have outstanding claims as asylum seekers, and as the Prime Minister will know, the Home Office can take 37 days to process Section 4 support. So will the Prime Minister intervene, stop these evictions, prevent a homelessness crisis in Glasgow, and respect live legal proceedings so the law can be clarified in this regard?
I say to the honourable gentleman, we are committed to providing asylum accommodation that's safe and secure. We take the well-being of asylum seekers and the local communities in which they live very seriously. Asylum seekers who would otherwise be destitute are provided with free, fully furnished accommodation while their applications are considered, and we cover utility costs, provide a cash allowance to cover other essential living needs. But once a person's asylum claim is fully determined, then their entitlement to that support will end. What I understand has been happening is that Serco has been providing accommodation at its own expense to over 300 people who are no longer eligible for such accommodation, either because they've been refused asylum or because they've been granted leave to remain and should move on to mainstream benefits and housing.
Jeremy Lefroy.
Mr. Speaker, last week I had the honour of visiting the world's best transformer factory in Stafford, in my constituency, run by General Electric. They were constructing the first of 72 transformers to go to Iraq. Now they are only able to do this through the support of UK Export Finance. Would my right honourable friend congratulate me? Would my right honourable friend... thing my right honourable friend should do is that, but would my right honourable friend congratulate UK Export Finance on backing British business?
Can I say to my honourable friend, I'm very happy to congratulate him for all the work that he has done for his constituency and more widely. And he's absolutely right. UK export finance is an essential part of the government support that can be provided to exporters. I'm very pleased that the Department for International Trade has changed the rules to enable UK export finance actually to be able to provide support for some smaller exporters, which has encouraged them. UKEF plays a vital role in our economy and in our exporting around the world, and I'm happy to congratulate them for the work they do.
I'm always happy to congratulate the honourable gentleman, as others will, for one very good reason that the public should know. The honourable gentleman invariably plays the ball rather than the man or the woman. He sticks to the arguments, and that's why he's respected not only by his constituents but across the House. Patrick Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the 26th of June, this House agreed an SNP resolution regretting that her legacy will be the hostile environment. And yesterday, the all-party groups on Africa and Malawi published a report showing that structural failures in the visa system is continuing to perpetuate that hostile environment. How can her government spend millions of pounds on a global marketing campaign saying that Britain is great, when for so many academics, artists and traders from Africa, Britain is closed?
Can I say to the honourable gentleman that entry clearance officers consider applications for visitor visas with the utmost rigour, because our visas are an important way of securing our border and an effective tool for us in reducing illegal immigration, tackling organised crime and protecting national security. He references visas for people coming from countries of Africa. The percentage of African nationals who saw their application granted is up by 4% on what it was 10 years ago, and is only slightly below the average rate of the last 10 years. And visa applications from African nationals are at their highest level since 2013.
Nigel Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 3 weeks ago, I was in New York for World Pride, a celebration of equality and love, with 150,000 people marching down Fifth Avenue, cheered on by millions of people. Then we had London Pride, and we'll have lots of other prides in towns and cities throughout the UK and Europe. But it's such a different story in so many other countries, where millions of people live in fear of prosecution and persecution. And Commonwealth countries blame British legacy legislation. What message does she have to them that they can change their laws progressively and that everybody in their countries can live in equality and harmony and love?
Well, can I say to my right honourable friend, he's absolutely right, and people will have seen a wonderful Pride parade here in London, and I was only sorry I was not able to be present at the Pride reception in number 10 Downing Street. Was pleased to be able to host, that people were hosted in number 10 once again this year. He raises an important issue. It's one that I raised at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting last year, where I made it clear to countries in the Commonwealth that we want to see them introducing those progressive laws, introducing those changes in their legislation, and more than that we are willing to help them and provide support to them and show them how the legislation that we have used, so that they can adopt that, so that people can indeed live in true equality.
Kirsty Blackman.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister claims to care about people whose lives have been destroyed by modern slavery, and she claims her work in this area will be part of her legacy. It is a legacy to be ashamed of, Mr. Speaker, as BuzzFeed News have uncovered Home Office data showing that only 16 of 326 child victims of modern slavery had their discretionary leave visas approved in the 20 months to December 2018. Refusing child trafficking victims safety, this cruel and callous hostile environment is the Prime Minister's legacy. Will she apologise or hang her head in shame?
Can I say to the honourable lady that we do, of course, constantly look at how we can improve our response to modern slavery. I'm very pleased. I had a meeting only a few days ago where I met many people involved in organisations dealing with supporting victims of modern slavery, but also those who are involved in the prosecution of perpetrators of modern slavery, and those parliamentarians who have been involved in the independent review that took place of the Modern Slavery Act. We're going to take on board most of the recommendations from that Act. But I have to say to the honourable lady, I make no apology for introducing the Modern Slavery Act. It was a Conservative government that actually dealt with this issue, that we continue to deal with this issue. We took it seriously when other parties were not willing to do so.
First glove.
Mr. Speaker, as a distinctly average cricketer who's fully aware of his limitations, I grew up dreaming of an England side lifting the Cricket World Cup in a Lord's final in front of a home crowd. How does she believe we maximise the opportunity of Sunday's incredible success to encourage the next generation to get involved and pick up a bat and ball?
Can I say to my honourable friend that, first of all, I think so many people around the country have been engaged and have taken inspiration from the England cricket team's success. But crucially, a very significant number of children have also been introduced to cricket. And I think that the work that takes place for cricket in the streets, for actually introducing children to the basics of cricket. I want to quote a figure which I heard yesterday, but Mr. Speaker, I do so with care because I think it's something like 1 million children have now been seeing cricket and been introduced to cricket as a result of the World Cup tournament here in the UK. We must build on that for the future.
Thank you. Neil Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday in Parliament, a young man named Adam, who has learning difficulties, spoke at the launch of a report from the Disabilities Benefit Consortium entitled "Has Welfare Become Unfair?" Adam told us about how, as a result of cuts to his benefit support, he's had to choose between paying to travel to his appointments and buying milk. What does the Prime Minister say to Adam, and how does she respond to that report, which says that disability benefits have been cut 4 times faster than others in the 9 years that she has been in government?
Well, can I say to the honourable gentleman that obviously the Secretary of State has heard the specific case that he raised, but when we look at the support that we have given to disabled people and people with health conditions, it is actually at a record high. Spending on disability benefits will be higher in every year to 2023 than in 2010. And what we have also done is provided support and continue to provide support for disabled people to get into the workplace. And the number of disabled people in work has increased by almost 950,000 over the last 5 years.
Maggie through.
Speaker, this year the school sports premium is worth about £500,000 to primary schools across my constituency. It's been a key driver in helping more children establish healthier lifestyles, which they will hopefully continue into childhood. Will my right honourable friend join me in encouraging the next government to look closely at extending this funding beyond 2020 so we can help even more children become healthier for life and also hopefully inspire some of those young people to become our World Cup winners of the future?
Well, can I say to my honourable friend, she's raised an important issue. I think we all recognise the importance of sport in schools, and the Sport Action Plan has an aspiration for every child to get 60 minutes of sport and activity a day, and that's why we did publish a cross-government school sport action plan on Monday. That will be taken forward. This is an issue that Conservatives in government have taken very seriously. We're putting that PE and sport premium in. It will continue in the 2019 to 2020 academic year. Obviously, future questions about spending will be for the spending review, but I think my honourable friend can take it that Conservatives in government will continue their commitment to ensuring that we see a healthy lifestyle for young people in this country.
John McNally.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On day-to-day issues, PM, post-Brexit concerns raised by Scotland's seafood industry, transport delays, new tariffs, taxes, put the industry simply on an unequal playing field with European counterparts. How can the PM, can she tell us how the UK government is going to support and protect this high-value industry when it faces product loss due to these delays that will certainly lead to higher and soaring insurance premiums and thresholds?
Well, can I say to the honourable gentleman that we take industry across the United Kingdom very seriously. We have ensured, he referenced the issue of Brexit and leaving the European Union. We have ensured, that a deal was negotiated which would have protected jobs and protected industry across the United Kingdom. Sadly, the honourable gentleman and others in this House chose not to support that. I continue to believe that the best way forward for industries in his constituency and across the UK is for us to leave the European Union and do so with a good deal.
Jack Brereton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Figures yesterday show wages are rising faster than inflation, meaning more money in the pockets of hard-working people in Stoke-on-Trent. Can I thank my right honourable friend for the action her government has been taking to help families with the cost of living, reducing taxes on income, increasing the national living wage and increasing free fuel duty?
Can I thank my honourable friend? I think it is good news indeed. It was good news from the employment figures we saw yesterday that there are more people in work now in this country than ever before. And I'm also pleased that we have been able to help working people with their finances. We've done that through the national living wage, we've done it through cutting taxes, we've done it through freezing fuel duty. And for the lowest paid, the national living wage and the cuts in taxes mean they now take home £4,500 more than they did under the last Labour government.
Kerry McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At Prime Minister's questions on the 26th of June, I was pleased to hear the Prime Minister express sympathy for my 18-year-old constituent, Jake Osborne, who has spinal muscular atrophy. In May, NICE posted a press release saying that the drug Spinraza would be made available to SMA patients, and that the clear implication was it would be made available to all of them, only for Jake to have his hopes cruelly dashed when he was told he was just outside the hitherto unmentioned eligibility criteria. This is a young man whose future is at stake. The Prime Minister said on that occasion she would follow up. Can I ask her if she has yet managed to do so?
Can I say to the Honourable Lady, I don't have a response to the specific case that she has made, but raised again, but I will ensure that a response comes to her before I leave office.
Thank you. Order. Order come after urgent questions, of which there are 3.